Hi there, it's Wendy Hernandez, and welcome to another episode of Command the Courtroom. Within the last week, I had a consultation with a client who was involved in a really toxic relationship with somebody she believed to be a narcissist. And she was struggling quite a bit about whether or not she should leave the relationship. And she's been struggling with this for many years. And what was stopping her from getting out of the relationship is the hell that she thought she was going to have to go through to get to the other side, and her fear of what she was going to have to walk through to get to the other side. And I've spoken with other potential clients like this one over the years, and I know there are a lot of people out there who are in relationships and they know they need to get out, but they don't because they don't feel like they can. They don't feel like they can withstand the pressure that they'll get to the other side alive, or they'll be able to be happy in the future. So that led me to today's guest. And the guest today is Kerri Smith-Osei. Did I say that right? Osei, I'm sorry, yeah. Kerri.
No, you did a great job. Close enough.
We went over in the beginning and I still kind of messed it up. But Kerri Smith-Osei. Kerri is a speaker, coach, mentor, and trainer. And she's appeared alongside other renowned speakers like Chaz Bono, the Reverend Michael Beckwith, and spiritual author teacher Gabby Bernstein. I love Reverend Beckwith and Gabby Bernstein, by the way.
Me too.
So Kerri is going to help us unpack the hesitation and fear that comes with leaving an abusive, toxic relationship. She's going to help give you tools that you can use to move forward and remind you that you can use these hard lessons that you're learning and create blessings and reframe your pain into purpose. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I think we had
I'm so
yeah. That's okay.
Okay, awesome. That's okay. All right, awesome. So, Kerri, I'd like to start off by having you talk to us about what makes a relationship toxic, because I think there's a lot of people out there who may be in relationships that are toxic, but they don't realize it. There are behaviors that are happening that they think this doesn't feel right, but they are not identifying with the fact that they have a toxic relationship.
Mm-hmm. So first, let me say to anyone who's in a toxic relationship currently, my heart goes out to you, because again, there are lots of reasons why we stay, right? But it's still painful and it's still a lot to deal with. And if there's kids involved, wow, that takes it to another level. So your strength just in recognizing some of the things that are holding you back is self-awareness that is necessary to even begin a process of leaving. So when we talk about what makes a relationship toxic, you're right. There are people who, again, are leaning into spaces that don't recognize that this isn't good for them. Probably because it's what they've seen growing up, right? They're mimicking relationships generationally that for them looked healthy. So now they're experiencing it and they're like, no, this is how my parents communicated. This is how my grandparents communicated. This is fine. Of course, they didn't know the other side of it, because as children, we see things, right? But we don't see a lot of the toxicity behind the scenes that our parents and caregivers go through. So that's a big part of it. We're taught to hang on. We're taught to work through things. We are taught to stay way past the expiration date in a lot of different scenarios. A relationship is also something that we're told is not disposable. You know, depending on our cultural background, once you get married, once you become committed to someone, we are generally told, do not leave that relationship. You fix it. Doesn't matter what you go through, you fix it, because you made a vow. For some people, it's, under God, you made this vow in a church setting, etc. So again, you stay because you made this promise, and in your mind, breaking this promise would break so many other things. So much disappointment would come from that. So we're programmed. And I'm giving you guys this background on purpose because I want you to understand that you're not weak. There's nothing to be ashamed of if you don't recognize these signs, because again, it's programming. And programming happens to the best of us. So the programming starts usually very young, or in looking at how other people show up in their relationships. And so the challenge to leave is almost impossible because you don't see anything wrong. But a toxic relationship primarily is when you think you just need love to sustain, but love now trumps affection, it trumps respect, and it trumps trust. Once you think love is trumping those things and those things no longer have the valid place that they should have in your relationship, chances are it is going down the path of becoming toxic. But of course, the biggest sign of toxicity is any kind of abuse, right? And I know that feels Captain Obvious, but I like to say it so that people really hear that and it lands where it needs to land. Physical, verbal, or emotional in particular. There's lots of other kinds of abuse, spiritual, financial, etc. But those top three is an immediate red flag. If there's any of that going on, it's toxic. The other thing is if there's an imbalance of power. Is your partner controlling you or the finances, or your friends, who you see, what you say, where you go? For some people, and I hate to say it, but it's the reality, women in particular, in the beginning, we see those things as, it's very cute, right? Oh my gosh, he or she is so, they don't want me to do these things. They want me to be with them all the time. And you get caught up. And that's the beginning of putting on your rose-colored glasses, because that's how it starts. Those subtle ways of controlling end up being giant forest fires of toxicity. But again, we don't recognize that. So if there's an imbalance of power in your relationship, please know that is a sign of toxicity. Some of the other things that you can ask yourself if you think you might be in a toxic relationship is when you're around your partner, do they drain you? Are you constantly walking on eggshells in conversations? Do you find you can't be your authentic self? That's a big one that I think people don't recognize because it's so subtle. Because you kind of merge in this partnership, right? And now we're talking the same almost. People are saying we're looking alike. And you think it's so cute. But it's kind of crazy after a while when you recognize that you don't know who you are in the relationship, right? So that is a sign too of toxicity. Do you get support from your partner? Is it like pulling teeth? Probably toxic. Are you keeping score of the things your partner is doing? And then trying to one up your partner, right? Like, are you secretly kind of just waiting for that thing to occur so you could release your own toxicity onto them? Are you in competition with your partner? Definitely toxic. What else? Do you feel like you're being held hostage in the relationship? That can look subjectively different for everyone, but we all know what that feeling of, it's like you're holding your breath all the time. That is a sign of being held hostage. So if that's the case for you, it's probably toxic. Are you constantly arguing? Again, another Captain Obvious one. However, what are the tone of your arguments now? Are people yelling, raising their voices, weaponizing trauma to throw in your face? Are those things happening? Is your partner a narcissist? That's actually using gaslighting, because that's huge. You mentioned that with one of your clients in the beginning, that there's a suspicion of narcissism from the partnership. Let me tell you something, guys. If your intuition or your gut kind of goes there and is telling you something isn't right, it's not a bad thing to Google narcissistic symptoms or, things to look for. I do warn you though, obviously with anything you Google or research, you can go down that, you can go down that black hole
Totally.
Oh my gosh, and now, right? And now everything is a sign. So you just want to have discernment around that. But honestly, gaslighting and manipulation become pretty obvious when you're in a toxic relationship, because you don't feel like yourself. You start to feel like, am I crazy for X, Y, or Z occurring? Like, I know that occurred. With my clients, one of the big things I tell them in that space is start writing stuff down. Start keeping your own little notebook, because you're not crazy. That's the thing. You're always going to be made to feel that, but you're not. So keep your notebook, or maybe in a note section of your phone, something that will be private,
Yes.
and start keeping track of that. But all those things that I just mentioned are giant signs of toxicity, and recognizing that you're in that type of relationship. The good news is obviously there is hope and there is light at the end of the tunnel, but I know it's difficult to see that when you're in it, right? You're in the frame, you can't see the picture. But if any of those things resonated, or any of those things feel like, wow, more than three are present in my relationship, you probably want to explore more and figure out, like, are you in the right partnership? Is it time for you to consider potentially leaving? Because it only gets worse. It doesn't get better once you recognize this, right? It doesn't get better, it gets worse. So
totally.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something to me that was interesting and it caught my attention. And that was, you were asking the questions do you find yourself being toxic in this relationship? So can you speak more to that, Kerri? Can being in a toxic relationship make a person toxic themselves?
Yeah, the unpopular opinion in response to that is a resounding yes. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but here's the thing, right? The more time you spend around a person, or let's make it more general first, the people you spend the most time with, you tend to take on their traits, right? Whether that's in a friendship or if you're like extremely close to your family members, but majority of them have toxic traits, but you're in it because that's your family. Well, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to eventually become like the people you are spending the most time around, which is why we definitely encourage you to spend time around people who are positive and that are contributing good things to the world, because then almost by osmosis, you will become that way as well. Well, it works the same when it comes to toxic relationships. And I don't want to say this and have anyone take it to heart where it feels more like victim shaming, because that's not what it is. This is just the reality of who you spend and exchange the most energy with and spend the most time with. So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is, you have to recognize those signs. You have to recognize when you're getting pulled into the poor behavior. It's going to start to feel normal. Other people are going to say things to you and you're going to find yourself defending not just your partner's behavior, but your own behavior. So there's got to be some level of self-awareness there. And I know it's difficult, right? Challenging, again, you're in it. But if a friend, family member, or someone you really, really care about is bringing some things to your attention, don't dismiss it. At least sit with it a little bit and really hear them out. Because if it's someone you really care about, they're not going to just bring things to you just to get you upset, right? They're not going to do that. They're going to see things you can't see, and they're going to prompt you with questions probably to get you talking so that you can hear. You can hear yourself speak about this out loud, and then it's like, oh my God, I really have been wearing these rose-colored toxic glasses this entire time. It's time for me to take them off. So my biggest thing for people in situations like that is you've got to be accountable for your own behavior. Again, it's not shaming you. It's not saying that you're weak. It's giving you a scientific fact of, if you are around XYZ situations, people, persons, experiences, you are more likely to become a sponge to it, right? So that's a general thing, and it's proven. So if you feel like that's happening to you, just know you have to be accountable for that. And then you have to start doing something about it, right? So again, the easiest way is ask a friend or a family member, someone that's close to you, their opinion on your behavior. And then take a deep breath, say nothing back, and be ready to listen, not defend. Right? So
yeah, that's a hard thing to do.
it's a really hard thing to do.
I mean, it's great. It's valuable. I mean, but yeah, I've participated in different things where I've been told, okay, you're just going to listen and not defend yourself. But it's
No, it's
valuable.
challenging. Yeah.
It's really valuable. And so, riffing off that, I've had many cases where, um, together, the parties, the emails, the exchanges, the things that they had going on in the relationship are just mind blowing to me, just crazy. Yet when I talk to my client individually, they seem like normal, rational, reasonable. And then, I hear this from the other side. And do you think it's possible that because of this toxicity, that two people together create the toxicity, and then individually they may not be toxic? Or do you think toxicity is a personality thing, or could it be a little of both?
I think it's a little bit of both, honestly, but let's be clear. This is all subjective to the person, because someone who's toxic is not necessarily going to present that way in public to other people. Definitely not with the lawyer of the opposing side. Like, the whole point is to show up and be seen and perceived a certain way. So that's an interest, what you just shared is interesting in the space of what you do, because if we really think about it, if you're going through a divorce, a separation, there's mediation, things like that happening. If I'm the person that's toxic, I'm for damn sure not showing up and being toxic in the mediation. Like, there is no way you're going to get to hold this against me. But my ex-partner to be is definitely going to hear it outside, right? Definitely going to hear it on the car ride home if we're still living in the same household at the time. So I feel like it could be a little bit of both. Like that's really a loaded question, honestly. I mean, do people have personality traits that make them toxic? Yeah, right. Do we always know that when we get into relationships? No, because we are being Pollyanna about it. We are seeing all the great things about this person.
Yeah.
And one thing that I know, like with my couples that I coach, when we talk about, we try to go back to basics. Well, what made you fall in love with that person? And they'll give their spiel about that, and then they're like, but that's not the person I'm married to now. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, it was a representative that you probably were in contact with initially. So I feel like, yeah, it's a little bit of everything that could cause the toxicity. However, two toxic people coming together is a giant trauma explosion.
Yeah.
Because then language is going to be mostly trauma responses. So you two, as a mirror for each other, both having toxic traits, you're never going to see it as that. You're going to communicate through trauma responses. You are going to respond through defense mechanisms. You are, I mean, like, you know what I mean? It's, you're coming together and you have no idea. Two broken pieces coming together can actually create a plate. That two broken pieces of a plate can come together and the plate be put back together, but it's still broken. And if two of you are looking at it like, still looks fine. I mean, we're okay, right? It's like,
Yeah.
how can anyone say anything about that? Like someone can tell you, guys, you know that plate is broken. You see that. Oh, it's fine. We eat off of it. Like we're good. What do you
Yeah.
care? Right.
Yeah.
So that's a tricky one. But
Yeah.
I do feel like two toxic people can be attracted to each other. I do feel like a toxic person can pull in a non-toxic person based on being a representative, and not the true person that they really are, which you find out, I don't know, months, years into the relationship.
Mhm.
So it's kind of loaded, but my big thing is just keep your eyes open for it,
Okay.
because you just never know. I have people come to me 35 years they've been married and they would have never seen, and obviously, right, Wendy, you're familiar with things like this. I can imagine the people that come to you and it's like decades into their relationship and now they want a divorce, and us on the other side of it, as lawyers, as coaches, therapists, we're sometimes perplexed because we're like, wait, 30 plus how many years?
Yeah.
And someone in the relationship woke up one morning and was like, this is BS. I can't do this anymore. And they start to move forward with that. So it's a tricky one to kind of, say whether or not where the toxicity is rooted.
Okay.
So
All right. Yeah, I get it. And you're right. I mean, just for this year alone, I've had several people in their 70s and 80s who have come to me wanting a divorce after 30, 40, 50 years of marriage. And I'm thinking, what the heck? It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's talk about that for a minute. For the person who is sitting in pain right now in a relationship, married or not married, together, 2 months or 20 years or 30 years or 40 years or 50 years, can you help us help them reframe the pain that they're sitting in into a new outlook or into purpose?
Sure. So that's the thing that I want everyone to understand. No matter what your situation is right now, there is always a way to reframe it because you are in charge of your outlook. You're in charge of, how you view things, how you think about things, and how you respond to things. It's so heartbreaking when people feel like they literally don't have a choice. Because I'm like, I mean, you just said there was 70, 80-year-olds coming married for 40, 50 years. I mean, my God, if you get to that point and you recognize, you know what, I still have a choice. Like, that's what we need to be remembering. So in order to reframe the pain into purpose, the first thing to understand about reframing is all about calling your power back to yourself. Because when you're in a toxic situation, you are giving up pieces of yourself subtly or not so subtly, probably on a daily basis. And with giving up those small pieces of yourself in every conversation, in every interaction, you're giving power to the perpetrator, to the abuser, to the toxic person. So reframing calls all that power back to you. I want you to hear me on that, right? Because this is why it's possible. This is your power. You get to call it back to you now. And you get to do that by reframing what the situation means to you. Because the essential idea behind reframing is that your point of view depends on the frame that you're viewing it in. So if you shift the frame just a little bit, the meaning changes, sometimes a lot of it. I think I made that word up, but you get what I'm saying,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Your thinking and your behavior does change along with how you are viewing a situation. So first, I think you must accept that the relationship is or was toxic. Like acceptance is, it's the gateway to so many other things. Once you can accept that, you get to take the power back somewhat, because now it's not going to control your thoughts all day long because you're just accepting it. We haven't gotten to the pain part yet. This is just the acceptance part. But understand that acceptance will counteract resentment. It's the antidote, I think, for resentment. So once you accept, it's like, okay, now I can move to the next part. Second part is pondering questions like, what can I learn from the situation? What did I learn from this situation? What did this crisis come to teach me? You never want to waste a good crisis, folks.
Right.
You never want to waste a good crisis. I get it. Being in a crisis feels detrimental, but it's showing up with a purpose if you really sit with it for a moment. So what can I learn from this? What did it show up to teach me? And then really write that down, journal about that, because there's always something. I mean, I'm perpetually positive, which can be very annoying for some people, but what I explain to people is I am not perpetually positive by accident. It is very much purposeful. It is very much intentional, right? Like, because you have to be willing to see the positive in a situation. Same thing here. The reframing allows you to see things a little bit differently. So after you have declared some acceptance, after you have pondered those questions that I put out there, I would say you can start to reframe with creating a personal mantra for yourself. Anything that's based around resilience. It can be as simple as, I'm enough, I'm a survivor, I'm no longer a victim. Those are simple enough to remember, but they reek of resilience. So you want to create some sort of a personal mantra to, again, start to reframe how you're showing up in the situation. Other things include stop expecting an apology. Again, these are so unpopular, right? These are unpopular statements and unpopular opinions. But release the need to get an apology. Release the need to have any closure from the partner. You may or may not get it, but if you are banking on it, you'll never be able to reframe this situation. So part of the reframe in general is to release that need to get that. And then start your self-forgiveness. Most people talk about forgiveness for the toxic partner, which still has to happen. However, we always jump right over the self-forgiveness. But the self-forgiveness is where I think the bulk of your power is. Because once you can forgive yourself for getting into this type of relationship, for not leaving fast enough, for not seeing the signs, for whatever other laundry list on the scroll thing that you didn't see, you can take another deep breath and say, oh my gosh, okay, now I have a little bit more clarity around getting to the next part. So which is forgiveness for the partner, by the way. But that self-forgiveness work is so important, and it's deliberate and it's intentional and it's necessary for the reframing to begin. Hindsight is 2020, guys, right? Like, no pun to the year itself, but whoa to the pun of the year itself of that we've just experienced. You've got to call all your power back to you inside of the reframe. You have got to also recognize as a part of your reframe how you were showing up in that relationship, and recognize that you're not going to show up that way in other relationships. If things that you were doing could have potentially been contributing to why you stayed, or, again, subjective to your situation. But being accountable is a huge part of a reframing. Accountability is your best friend, right? Mm-hmm. Once you can start keeping promises to yourself, golly, you regain trust with yourself, you start to shift and reframe right there. And once you can start to trust yourself again, you will definitely be able to start figuring out how you can trust in another relationship. So those are a lot of key ways to turn that pain into purpose. Again, subjectively based on your situation, you'll probably come up with other ways, but start with these tips because I feel like they'll prompt you and start a conversation that will be really great in order for you to really turn the thoughts around. But I think what I've just given is enough for someone who is a little bit afraid of, the what to do. I don't want to give you 50 things to do because there's a million things you could do. But try these tips, and I feel like it's the beginning of the reframe and turning that pain into purpose.
And those are the first steps. And it's absolutely possible from somebody to emerge from pain into just absolute, happiness, joyousness, freedom. Is that right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I know we can't see it while we're in it, but you know what's a good way, and I tell clients to do this all the time. Do a check-in with yourself from a year ago, 2 years ago, even 3 months ago, and connect those dots of where you were and where you are. If you're in a better place right now, because that's the thing. When we're in it, we cannot see it. But 5 years later, when we look back, we're like, I can't believe I was that person. I can't believe I did those things, etc. If it's difficult for you to see that for yourself, talk to a friend who you've known or maybe even witnessed, gone through something really, really intense. And now they're on the other side of it, happier than ever, or in the beginning stages of being happy, right? Look at that as a testimony, because sometimes it is difficult to see it for yourself. So look for it in other people if that's helpful, but you got to hang on to that hope of knowing everything is temporary. None of this is going to last. We've experienced a pandemic, collective trauma, but it's not going to last forever. It didn't last forever. It's not right. And I think people forget that. So that's kind of my example of remembering, the sadness doesn't last forever. The joy is definitely on the other side of this. You just have to want it and be willing to do the work to kind of heal through it, because it's not a just jump over the feelings, right? You got to go through these feelings, but as you go through, wow, what you see on the other side. So absolutely, I agree that joy is possible even after the biggest heartbreak. It's for sure possible.
Awesome. So I love those steps for helping for somebody who's really desperately wanting to reframe. Kerri, could you give us some help on once a person has exited the toxic relationship, how do they cope? Because I think that's what most people are afraid of, is like, how am I going to get through this if I leave?
Yeah. And again, I don't want to downplay how much work goes into even having a mindset to be able to go. So again, you're not weak for not being able to leave, right? Your time is coming. And for a lot of people, sometimes it takes a plan, a very robust plan, a plan with lots of steps that may even include a way to stay safe. So don't feel ashamed if it's taking a little bit longer, but do stay proactive. When you first get out of a toxic relationship, like you've had the aha moment, oh my gosh, you've gone to see Wendy, you've created a plan, you've got everything right where you need it, except the emotional part is still tough. Have yourself a good cry. I know that feels so simplistic, like, what do you mean? I'm crying all day anyway. Make this cry very intentional. Have a good cry, feel those feelings, allow yourself to feel really the pain of what happened, with the thought of you're not going to stay there. It's not going to be forever, but you have to acknowledge it. For my clients, I tell them, if you feel like, because for some people they're like, yeah, but if I start crying, what if I don't stop? Like all these irrational thoughts come up. I'm like, you know what? Set a timer for 1 hour and cry your eyes out. Like really go there, that ugly cry, whatever it looks like for you, like really go there. And then when the timer goes off, I'm big on these deep breaths, right? Take another deep breath and you begin the pivot, the turnaround of, okay, because having that really good cry also releases a lot of toxins. It also, the endorphins, all the stuff. So it literally does change the way your brain starts to, or your mind starts to function and see things and perceive things. So that good cry is the first part of how you cope. Do not confuse your feelings with facts. That's so important. Do not confuse your feelings with facts. This is another way to cope, right? Because we feel sad. For some people, they start to think about all the good characteristics of the toxic person. And, but I feel like they could change. I feel like, there really is a good person in there. I really feel like, and I feel like, and I feel like. But the fact is, this person has done, again, the laundry list on a scroll of things. Let's not forget that. it's not about holding it against them. It's about making sure you don't go backwards. Do not confuse feelings with facts. The other way to cope is when you first get out of the relationship, start to keep what we call in therapy and also as a coach, daily thought log, right? Because this is akin to the do not confuse feelings with facts. You keep a daily thought log because it's practical. And you can write all your feelings down in different spaces throughout the day while you're in your healing process. And then there will come a time where you can go back and look at your progress. That's also what I was saying, as far as like connecting the dots, but this is a literal way to do it because you're writing it down. Daily thought log. It also helps you to see where all of your cognitive distortions are. When people are going through this much pain and they've made it out of something, they tend to catastrophize lots of other things. They tend to overgeneralize. They tend to have a thought pattern that's really all or nothing. That's just your trauma talking. So when you keep a daily thought log, you get to not confuse feelings with facts. You get to see your growth as you go, right? All these good things are coming. How else can you cope? Create some boundaries, new boundaries, boundaries that maybe you didn't have in place before, except the difference now is you're going to stick to them. And these boundaries can start even with your friendships. You may not want to have big talks with people immediately following a divorce or a breakup. And you may need to say that to friends, family, and whoever. I know you want to be here for me. I appreciate you. I need to go through my own process right now. I don't want to talk. Friends and family, they're going to interpret that as, oh my gosh, we need to go over there right now. She or he is saying this, but we know what's really going on. We need to go knock that door down. No, right? Like when they come, and they will, by the way, many of them will knock on that door. You just go look through the little peephole. Remember I said, I don't want to see anyone right now. You can reassure them, I am not harming myself, because I think that's really where that comes from, right? Like the rush to come and save you is from making sure you're not having dark thoughts and you're going to harm yourself. So you can reassure, but create those boundaries. What else? Learn how to pour into yourself. That's huge. Because then you won't seek it from a partner, right? Because again, that's like the beginning of how things become toxic. You make your world about another person, forgetting that even that person can't even fulfill all those needs, right? We need several people in our lives, in different lanes for us to recognize, to get all of our needs met. Remember who you were before the relationship. That's so important. Not to say you want to be the same person after, because let's say you were married for 40 years. I don't expect you to be who you were 40 years ago, but you do have to tap back into those qualities and those values that you had, those things about yourself before all these things happen. I do want you to tap back into that a smidge, because you got to get your footing all over again, right? Like, because that's a big part of why people are so afraid of what occurs after. They don't even know who they are when they come out of these toxic relationships. So the mission is get to know yourself all over again. Remember who you were. Think about who you want to be now that it's over. What are your strengths? What do you value about yourself? What weren't you able to do while you were in the relationship? Can you do some of those things now? It could be simple things. I really loved art and painting, but my partner, thought it was stupid or, made fun or whatever the case is. Start doing those things again. Pick up a new hobby. Maybe it's something you never tried before. What else? There's so many great things you can do to cope. Spend time. You do spend time with people you love eventually, because you do need that support and that community, right? You need it, but you don't necessarily need it 2 days after you sign divorce papers.
Right.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Right. So meditate, things like that. Fill yourself up with activities that just really, really feed your soul. And lastly, I will say, because there is so much, I could honestly talk about the coping forever. I'll wrap it up with saying, look for joy and happiness in even the smallest of things. It doesn't have to be grand gestures, right? Like coping starts with baby steps. Yep. So look for joy and happiness in small things, and then that will grow. And you will start to feel more confident and more like yourself again. And then you'll be able to take those steps forward.
I agree with that 100%. And I think that if people came at this process with a curious mind,
Yes.
and just looking at it like they're just unfolding or expanding. I mean, I think it could, even though it may start as painful, it could evolve into something that's really satisfying and fun.
I agree. I absolutely agree with that. Yep.
Okay, awesome, Kerri. So you've given us a lot to think about here today. And I know there's a lot of people who need help with it. I experience them personally in my practice. They reach out to me via the YouTube channel. And I know that you work with people. You're a coach, Kerri. So can you share with us how the work you do helps individuals reclaim their power after leaving a toxic relationship?
Sure. I'll start with a quick reminder for everyone, because yeah, I do this work, I'm engrossed in it, but it's not robotic. Like, I feel these people's hearts. I've been in these situations. I've given up my power in the past, so it's a task to get it back. But here's my big reminder before I kind of give you some details about how I do it. You're worthy of a healthy love. We are all worthy of a healthy love. Do not make that mistake of thinking that your past and the mistakes, air quotes, that you may have made in who you chose defines who you are, okay? And who you will be in future relationships. Get support from someone like me, someone like other coaches, other therapists, other mental health, because that's a big thing too that I don't think we talked about. But I need to say, toxic relationships can really lead to mental health challenges too. Depression, anxiety, PTSD. There's so much there. Do not go down that path alone. Please get support, right? With the understanding that you are worthy. You deserve what you desire. With me in my work, that this is how I kind of start that process. It's kind of like people come to me and they have amnesia, right? Because about who they are, about their worth, about feeling like they're enough, feeling like they'll never be really seen, they'll never be really heard, all of those things. So I start with that reminder. I start with planting new seeds, so that they can understand, and then they water those seeds, and it grows to that reminder of, you again, you deserve what you desire. So the fear of thinking that you will never experience another healthy love is palpable, and I get that. So we work on a lot of discernment in the work that I do with folks. I'm not giving you the actual steps, because a lot of it is proprietary, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. So we start to reclaim your power by reminding you about your worth, and that happens through several tools. Having discernment around the potential for attracting new healthy love in the future. We do that through more tools. And I'm also a law of attraction practitioner. So a lot of the work that we do too, I mean, it is very much based on science and the laws of the universe, things that I know to be true based on research, etc. And then we work on overcoming your fear of being back in the world, the fear of of never regaining all the things that you lost, right? Because those fears are so huge. So we do a lot of work around that. One of the other things that I do beyond coaching, but it's a part of the process, is energy healing. And the modality that I use is called emotion code. And emotion code is me working with your subconscious, getting yes or no answers by using muscle testing. And what I'm doing in that is I'm looking for negative trapped emotions that are associated with traumatic experiences that are stuck inside of your body. So some of the work I do with clients is we go in and we remove those things, which it would probably take another hour for me to explain the intricacies of that, but definitely you can check that out on my website. But that's another part of how the work comes together. It's not just coaching and talking. We're also doing some other things, from a energy space, because we're all made up of energy. I work with people on their negative self-talk. So a lot of the work I do combined is about figuring out the root of things, not truly staying in that space, because that's more therapy. I'm also a therapist in training, so my work kind of, it goes, it's a little bit of everything. But when you come to me for specifically coaching, we are, looking at the root of it, and then we figure out where you want to go from here. Though we look at the root, but we don't spend a lot of time there. That's therapy. In coaching, we're like, okay, we're here. We know what happened. How do we get that action plan in place to move you forward? So a lot of that is building you back up, because many of you come to me feeling broken. And so we have to build you back up in that space, and then using the tools, the homework exercises, lots of journaling. That's a big one. Lots of visualization, because I think it's important for you to be able to see what the future, have a vision using your imagination at the very least of seeing what you could potentially become. So for me, it's a combination of coaching and energy healing, soon to be added therapy, so that we could do work holistically. I'm all about mind, body, spirit. So when you come and you work with me, you're getting a little bit of everything, in a very customized way, because again, each person and the pace that they can move at is a little bit different. But I'm big on helping you overcome the fears and feeling paralyzed, right? Like working with me is about taking action. So while it might be uncomfortable, we're not just going to sit in and cry about what has happened. We're going to cry. That's going to happen in the beginning, for sure. We may even cry here and there throughout, but we're definitely more so about empowerment and moving you forward. You've been here. This happened. Oh, okay. That's frustrating and all the other things. Deep breath, pivot. Now what? So the work starts with the now what? Now what do you want? Let's go there. Right. So I hope that was a good encapsulation of kind of all the things. So much to it, right? We're trying to simplify it.
Totally. It's amazing. I mean, I love how you're bringing different pieces together. I mean, the science, the quantum physics, the kinesiology, the therapy background. I mean, it truly is holistic. So I thank you so much for all of the knowledge that you've shared. And, for anybody out there who listened to this interview, and you feel like, what Kerri has said has spoken to you, I encourage you to please reach out to her. I have no doubt that she can help you. Know that you're not alone. Know that happiness is possible for you. And before I let you go, Kerri, can you tell us how specifically people can find you and reach out to you if they're interested in working with you?
Sure. One giant hub for everything is just my website. So I am Coach Kerri, IamCoachKerri.com, or you can email me. Same. I'm Coach Kerri at Gmail. But go to my website. You can get to all my social media from there as well. By the way, all of my social media handles is I am Coach Kerri. So honestly, if you go to, you can go to Instagram or Facebook, any of those spots, you can find me that way. But you can hit me up through my website, and however I can be of service, it would be my pleasure. We can figure out what you need, and go from there.
Thank you so much. Thank you for spending the time with us, Kerri. You've helped. I'm sure it's going to be hundreds, if not thousands of people who are watching this video. And even just one is enough. So thank you for your time.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay. And so for all you out there watching, I will be back next week with another episode. Until then, remember to keep on trucking and get out there and command the courtroom. See you next time.